Hey, y'all, it's executive producer Sonia Cho Swanson. And guess what? New season, new rules. Fall restrictions are in effect September through October. That means grass can only be watered 3 days a week. And yes, it's the law. Don't miss a beat. Change your watering clock now. Trees and plants, they need less water, just a recommended 2 days a week with drip irrigation. Visit snwa.com to find your assigned watering days and tips to maintain a healthy landscape. SNWA is a not-for-profit water agency.
Black Mountain Institute at UNLV is celebrating its 20th anniversary, and you're invited to free literary programming all year long. Wow. 2 decades of remarkable BMI readings, workshops, and festivals. I've had the honor to experience many of them, sometimes as a participant. So let's celebrate this cultural powerhouse. On October 15th, join BMI at the Vegas Theater Company for Stradio Lab. It's a live comedy podcast that explores the mysteries of straight culture. Then, on November 18th, comedian Maz Drabani will be in conversation at the UNLV Student Union. So go right now and visit blackmountaininstitute.org for more information.
On September 22nd, the Nevada Division of Environmental Protection sent a letter to the Boring Company accusing them of nearly 800 violations committed during construction of the Tesla tunnels. Today on CityCast Las Vegas, I'm here with ProPublica reporter Anjanette Damon and my co-host David Figler. And we've got the exclusive scoop on what's in this letter and the cease and desist order the Boring Company could face as a result. If you've listened to our reporting on Boring before, apparently that was the tip of the iceberg. This letter suggests there's a whole lot more going on. It's Friday, October 10th. I'm Sarah Lohman, and here's what Las Vegas is talking about. David and Anjanette, welcome to the pod.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Sarah.
So, David, you've been working on Boring reporting for a while, but what new revelations about the Boring Company's activities here in Vegas have come to light?
Well, Sarah, I think that the main new revelation is that at least the state government is at the point where they need to tell the Boring Company, we're watching you, we've assessed all the various violations we think that you've committed, and now it's time to pay the piper. In other words, this is not a letter they send out lightly, and obviously they spend a lot of time working on it. So what the letter does is it summarizes all of the violations that this one state agency is in charge of, some of which are familiar to us because we reported on them, some of which are new.
And I just want to jump in here real quick to say that the company has formally engaged in the dispute resolution process. And so they're formally disputing the new allegations that are in this letter.
So this letter has come from our state division of environmental protection. You know, certainly there's been citations before and fines paid to a number of different agencies at different levels. Anjanette, what are the nature of these specific violations, the almost 800 that were laid out in this letter? Like what kind of bad behavior are we talking about here?
So all of these violations are under the purview of the Bureau of Water Pollution Control. And so what this agency does is really look at making sure that the public is protected from the waste that's generated by construction, most importantly, the water and the soil. A lot of water, a lot of waste, dirt is generated by this digging. It's pretty caustic stuff in some cases, like workers have been burned, firefighters have to decontaminate their stuff if they go into the project site. And so what the Bureau has found that over the course of the last 2 years, they've noted violations on just a number of inspections. And so you have the stuff that was in our story prior, like, water being discharged into the sewer on the streets, muck falling out of trucks. This went a little bit deeper and found that, the company started construction without getting all the necessary approvals that they needed. One of the big ones was they didn't hire an independent certified environmental manager who was supposed to perform weekly inspections of all of their construction sites to make sure that they were following the rules. And the one thing that really strikes me here is this letter has to do with a settlement agreement that the company reached with state regulators in 2022 because of violations that they had made in 2019. And so the company came and said, okay, you want to regulate us? This is what we will agree to in the settlement agreement. This is how we'll act. This is how you can hold us accountable. And then, according to this new letter, they went and broke their word.
So these nearly 800 environmental violations have only occurred since 2022.
Yeah, the earliest inspection that's noted on the letter is in 2023.
Wow, so only since 2023. Okay. And
the bulk of the violations were in 2024.
Yeah.
Okay. And this is already after the Boring Company had gone through similar process, had reached a settlement, and they've just continued to commit environmental violations.
Alleged, yeah. And that goes back to 2022, right?
According to this letter, they're being accused of, again, nearly 800. So why should the public be concerned about these accusations?
Well, apart from the obvious, Sarah, that, we don't want untreated waste materials being dumped into our, potential water sources, really the big bulk issue here is that there's not somebody kind of watching out and making sure that the company is, week to week at every site following the rules, which are designed to keep us all safe and keep our water safe. And so
what is the concern with the water? Is this just things that are coming out of the soil, or is there something that the Boring Company is using in this process?
All of the above, theoretically. Okay. But, look, a great analogy is when we weren't testing for COVID. And so we said there's no COVID because we're not testing. Right? You don't know unless you're actually doing the work, right? And so here there are over, almost 700 times that an inspection was supposed to take place that NDEP is saying didn't take place. That is in of itself its own problem. Would they have found stuff? Would they have not have found stuff? We don't know because they didn't do what they had promised to do under the last agreement. And that should be a concern to everybody.
Who would be the person that would do that inspection? Someone from NDEP?
Well, this is something that the company has been pushing for on a number of levels, is they say, look, your existing regulations, we don't fit under this. This is a new technology, a new way of doing things. And so they've been working state and local officials to come up with different ways of, quote unquote, regulating them. And so in this case, this agreement that they made with the Water Pollution Control Bureau is what is supposed to be governing their activities. And just to point back on, what you were discussing last, what is in the water, part of what they were supposed to do was to submit regular discharge monitoring reports so that we would know exactly what was in the water. And they failed to do that repeatedly to the point that the Bureau had to constantly remind them, hey, you need to turn in these reports. We need to know what's in the water.
Why would they not do that testing? Is it time? Is it money?
I want to make it real clear. They're certainly testing the water and sending in samples, and those samples are coming back okay. This is more of a concern of the water that isn't necessarily being tested or which might be tested depending on how the regulations go. And without doing these regular site investigations at every site where boring is creating, these stations and tunnels, et cetera, you just don't know. And
I think an independent inspector, that's the key, right?
With a third-party inspector.
I gotcha.
Yeah, that it has to be certified. So, why wouldn't they want to do that? I don't know. Is it cost? Is it time? Is it just in the way? I don't know, because Boring doesn't respond when we ask them questions. Let's just be real about it.
Yes, to nobody, not just us, I want to add. So despite testing sometimes, the Boring Company has allegedly racked up nearly 800 violations since 2023. Are they being fined for these violations?
Well, the letter that was sent out that we got a hold of does suggest about $250,000 in fines. They have a short time to pay it or dispute it.
$250,000. That's nothing to the Boring Company.
And Jeanette.
And we spoke with a public policy professor who made this exact point. In order to be effective, fines need to really make a dent in the bottom line of the company. And in this case, we should note, $250,000 is not nothing. But this is this is a $7 billion company. And what's more is, under the agreement, the state has the power to issue daily fines for all of these violations, and they've decided to knock that down. David did the back of the napkin calculation that if they had assessed the full $5,000 fine for all of these missed inspections, they could be facing a total penalty of $3 million. But I want to read this sentence directly from the report because it's just so striking to me. The state regulators say, given the extraordinary number of violations, NDEP has decided to exercise its discretion to reduce the penalty to 2 5,000 violations per permit, which it believes offers a reasonable penalty that will still serve to deter future noncompliance conduct.
Internet, that's crazy to me because this company is also owned by Elon Musk, he's literally the richest man on the planet. He's got $250,000 rolling around in his couch cushions, It's in the little center console in his car. It is Tesla. So how...
You think he drives a Tesla? But seriously, Sarah, I think that the striking thing to everyone is that they're being rewarded to a certain degree for committing so many violations. As Anjanette just read, the language from the letter says, due to so many of your violations, we're going to reduce the fine.
Yeah.
I mean, in law, we call this the Costco principle, where, you're basically committing violations in bulk. So you get a cheaper rate per violation.
So why would they reduce the fines to that degree?
I think it's probably normal practice that, if you do fine for every single day, the fines really, really add up. But, that's an argument to be had that maybe those fines do need to be stiffer if they're serious about deterring future noncompliance. And this public policy professor that I spoke with said he's, reviewed work that suggests that penalties that are too small in this realm can actually encourage recidivism or repeat offenses. So, it's something that the public should look at.
I mean, it seems like maybe it's just easier to pay the fines than to actually do the work, the due diligence of testing.
Huh. What a novel approach to dealing with pesky environmental regulations.
Looked at me with the tightest lips. And I was like, I figured it out. Did I make the connection? Great.
Hey y'all, producer Layla Mohammed here. Expect a haunting good time at the 12th annual Halloween at Opportunity Village's Magical Forest. The outdoor, all-ages theme park is open throughout October. Admission includes rides, the Magical Forest Cemetery Walk, the Forest Express train, nightly entertainment, and trick-or-treat stations. I'm also super excited for the goodies at this year's holiday shop and retail kiosk. Plus, you can make a night out of it and enjoy dinner at one of the many food outlets at Halloween, including, and this is my favorite part, a beer garden, open select nights for the 21-plus crowd. As one of the primary fundraisers for Opportunity Village, attending Halloween directly supports people with disabilities in Southern Nevada. This year, Halloween is open from October 10th through the 12th and October 17th through November 2nd. Tickets are $25 and can be purchased online at www.halloween.org. That's Halloween with a V. Stay updated with the nightly hauntings by following the event's social media accounts on Facebook and Instagram at Magical Forest OV.
Hey y'all, it's executive producer Sonia Cho Swanson, and it is fall road trip season. So if you're headed up to Utah, make sure to check out Black Rock Resort. It is a luxury hotel just outside of Park City and 15 minutes from Main Street. All of their suites have full kitchens and laundry. And for dining options, they've got Overlook Restaurant and On the Rocks Bar right there on site. Let's talk about amenities. They have a shuttle to ski areas and Main Street. They've got a game room, a steam room, a sauna, and year-round outdoor pool and hot tub, so pack that swimsuit. Plus, Black Rock Event Center is opening in November, and that's a new NHL-sized ice arena, which is home to the Utah Outliers team, but they're also going to be having concerts there as well, so check out their events calendar. Visit blackrockmountainresort.com and use promo code CITYCAST, which will get you 20% off, a $50 resort credit, and, best of all, 2 p.m. late checkout. That's blackrockmountainresort.com, promo code CITYCAST.
Why now? Why did this letter come out now?
Well, I think that's still a question that is a bit unanswered, but I did hear back from the state, and they said, look, we take this very seriously, and this process of, compiling all of our inspections and violations and penalties, it just takes time. And, I've been a government reporter for, 2 decades now. And I'll say that rings true, that sometimes the wheels of government do move quite slowly.
I don't think that ProPublica, and by the way, we really need to mention the exemplary work. The driving force of the original reporting was Daniel Rothberg, who's one of our colleagues, and, painstakingly categorizing many of the same violations that are now appearing in the government's cease and desist letter, which is 20 pages long and pretty detailed. And so,
wait, is it a cease and desist?
Yeah. So not to get hyper technical, but they have the title of this letter is basically a cease and desist and notice of violations. So what NDEP is doing here is saying, hey, you, boring company, need to cease and desist non-compliance. You need to start doing your testing. You need to stop dumping water. You need to get all the permits before you
stop not doing things.
Stop
that
not
are bad.
doing right. But also, you have some fines to pay. And also, if you can't cease and desist your bad behavior, your alleged bad behavior, we can cease and desist your operations. They made it very clear in the letter right at the very top that says, we retain the power, and they quote chapter and verse of what gives them the authority to shut down the operation altogether.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. I'm sorry for taking us a little bit off track. But also, I just want to point out that rather famously, journalism has often led to changes in laws, to people being held accountable for their bad behavior. So while we don't know that the work we've been doing with ProPublica and CityCast is the cause of it, it certainly hasn't hurt. That's for sure. So does this letter...
we definitely put a lot of it in one place for this government entity to be able to kind of look backwards. But there's a lot of stuff that's in there that we didn't even report on. More on the mundane side. We got the big splashy stuff, literally splashy stuff.
Splashy water splashy, muck splashy, corrosive splashy, allegedly. So does this letter listing these violations, does this change anything for Boring right now?
Well, again, the company has not gotten back to us on our requests for comment. But, the state is saying you need to cease and desist these non-compliant activities. You need to hire this certified environmental manager to conduct the inspections. You need to submit your reports. You need to better control your work sites. Some of the violations were, not keeping up the perimeters to keep muck and water and whatever else from coming off of the work sites. So, the company can dispute this. There is a process for saying, hey, we don't agree with this letter. And the state can enter into that dispute resolution process with them. But as the letter stands, they're supposed to pay this penalty and, conform their behavior to the problems that were identified in it.
Do we think they will?
Well, they are disputing it, and so they're challenging both the findings and presumably the payment of fines as well. If history's any indicator, this is exactly the move they make. They tend to fight allegations of them not doing things correctly. And, the very public-facing, let's just say, advocates for the Boring project, people like the LVCVA, some of the county commissioners who seem, to really love this project, continually say, look, it's safe. We wouldn't let them go forward if it wasn't safe. They're doing everything right. We've got our eyes on them. But, that's a counter narrative to what we're seeing in this letter that we're talking about today. And so I think that the Boring Company, it's very consistent that they're challenging it. When those initial OSHA violations came out, that workers were getting hit with corrosive materials and stuff, they contested that and dragged out those OSHA proceedings. And I think they're actually still going on. There was another work site incident this summer, not related to this in-depth letter, where there was reporting that a worker at one of the Boring tunnel sites was literally crushed. His pelvis was crushed in a mishap that the fire department had to respond to, et cetera. So, the bottom line here is, yes, they are contesting it. No big surprise. Some of the violations here seem very straightforward, but they are certainly exercising their right to contest it.
I also just want to point out that despite all of this they're really behind schedule opening those Tesla tunnel stops. They're supposed to be done by now, and they are far from done.
They were going to be done by the Super Bowl, I think. Was the initial, the last Super Bowl that occurred back in, what was it, 2024?
So what do you think it would take for the Boring Company to change their ways and be good boys and, not rack up violations like this, to actually have like professional above board conduct here in Las Vegas?
Well, it begs the question, Sarah, because, what should have been done from the very beginning when they're undertaking such a huge project is that, like any other, project of this nature involving so much land and so much mechanical operations and so much potential impact on the community, that they should have been working in conjunction with Public Works, that they should have had public hearings and input from the people who live here, that they should have worked, if they're going to call this a transport project through our city designed to alleviate traffic, to work with our Regional Transportation Commission. These are the things that should have been in place to guarantee. But I think what Boring would say is that, that's so inefficient that would drag this out forever. So we're going to do it as privatized people in a much more efficient way. But for all these pesky cease and desist letters and everything else, we would have already been done, So I think it's just a philosophical debate as to what's the better way to approach these sort of major city type projects. And I don't know if anything does change Boring's attitude or philosophy on how to accomplish their ultimate goal, which is to get the entire system up and running.
Yeah, I mean, Elon Musk has been clear on this point time and again, his antipathy for environmental regulations. He just is philosophically opposed to them and think that they stand in the way of progress and business. He's been very clear on that point.
But I want to make it really clear. It's like, I don't know what's in Boring's mind. I think they would say certain things because it's really consistent with how they've acted on stuff before. But, who knows? Maybe they'll say, you're right. We will do better on this now second time around where we're getting this letter. And we promise that we won't need to be on double secret probation any longer. We're going to be good. We're going to be good actors. They could go that route, too.
And I'll say, they've been very engaged with government regulators and officials, whether you want to call that lobbying, whether you want to call that, participating in the conversation. It's not like they're just saying, hey, get off our backs, let us do our work.
Right.
We have records that show that they've been very engaged on the county level with the fire department, with, the state. So they are engaging.
Listen, I'm not a government official, but if you're going to dig tunnels under the ground where people live
in a desert,
into the water table, like, you have to do it the right way. You have to care about people. It's both dangerous for people in the tunnel and for us above ground here. So the letter's been served. What happens now?
Well, the company was pretty quick to respond to the state and said that it wants to engage in the dispute resolution process that's envisioned in the agreement. So they're disputing the violations. Once that process is finished, they would have about 2 weeks to submit to pay any penalties that arise after that dispute process is finished.
And we don't know how long that will actually take.
And honestly, it could take a very long time. When they were cited in 2019, it took, 2 years to come up with the settlement agreement that's in place now.
Stories like this that, are coming out from ProPublica are going to hasten public eyes on that sort of process to see where it goes and how it goes. Because like Anjanette says, they're engaging public officials. In a lot of ways, a lot of things that we turned over, and again, with Daniel Rothberg on that original reporting, was that, they're basically begging regulators to kind of get off their back a little bit, let them do it. What they're doing isn't dangerous. They keep calling this a very novel project, the digging of holes underground so that cars can drive through tunnels, saying that that's very novel and that, you need to rethink the regulatory structure. So, what will Boring do? Maybe they'll just sort of acquiesce, and maybe they'll try to lobby for more leeway to do it the way they want to do it. We just have to wait and see.
Thank you both so much for being here.
Thanks. It's been a real pleasure.
I mean, it is my job, Sarah, but thank you.
Yeah, I know. But thank you. Before you go, I want to thank everyone who became a CityCast Las Vegas neighbor during our fall membership campaign. It's official. We've wrapped, and we couldn't have done it without you. You know, your support supports our podcast and partnerships like this Boring Company investigation partnership with ProPublica.
Yeah, and I want to welcome our latest group of new neighbors. There's so many names, Sarah. Let's split this up because I'm so proud that all these people are new neighbors. People like Leslie J., Taryn T., Jennifer S., Russell E., Jessica C., Barbara K., Catherine P., Katie O., Rosalind T., Lauren N., Evan A., Tamara L., Liz M. You want to take it?
Yeah, we got Don C., Elise R., Wayne L., David M., not David F., you're already here, David M., Michael H., Raneem S., JKL, Sarah D., Beth B., Nicole K., Paula J., Veronica O., Joey B., and Steve O.
Gonna keep going, man. Ricardo S., Alana B., Natalie V., Lynn B., Ashley K., Michelle E., Isaac R., Richard L., John M., Ed K., Elise K., Melissa V., and Genevieve M.
Or maybe Genevieve M. And a little insider tip, if you still want to join and get that Neighbors Make Las Vegas tote, we'll still send you one if you sign up by tonight. So just go to membership.citycast.fm. That's all for today here on CityCast Las Vegas. Our executive producer is Sonia Cho Swanson. Our producer is Leila Mohammed. Our roving producers this week were Natalie Rivera and Selena Say Reynolds. Our newsletter editor is Rob Katzel-Reese. Our roving newsletter editor was Natalie Aldana. Our hosts are David Figler and me, Sarah Lohman. Music is by OG Moose, Arthur Benson, courtesy of Epidemic Sound, Brent Busby, and all the kimonos. We record this show in the traditional homelands of the Nawuvi, the Southern Paiute people. Hey, if you enjoyed this show, send it to a friend. Give us a rating on your iTunes or whatever. Leave us a review. Subscribe to our morning newsletter, Hey Las Vegas. And don't forget, you can support this show and get great perks by becoming a CityCast Las Vegas neighbor at membership.citycast.fm. We'll be back Tuesday morning with more news from around the city. Enjoy the holiday and take care.